Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are going to get today's show started with Alvina Vasquez. She is a spokesperson for No on Initiative 300. So how are you?
I'm good.
Wonderful. So Initiative 300, it's dealing with homelessness, it's dealing with camping,
Right.
where you're not supposed to camp, essentially. So let's first talk about you and your background and what brought you on board to be a spokesperson.
So I am from Denver. I grew up in Westminster. I've been here my whole life. I love it here, like many of us do. I've been on the campaign since December. I just recently was on the Jared Pulls for Colorado campaign. So I traveled through the state all last year, and I'm excited to be on the Together Denver and talk about how we use our public space in Denver.
Awesome. So let's talk about exactly what Initiative 300 is, because I'm not sure that everyone knows just yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So April 15th, obviously, there's a big election coming up. April 15th ballots will be sent to your viewers, your listeners' mailboxes, and there's going to be a lot of exciting things to vote for on this ballot. I mean, we have a full city council and mayors and all kinds of exciting stuff. But the concern with Initiative 300 is it relates to how we use public space in Denver. It would change the municipal code on park curfews and all kinds of enforcements that we have in our public space to keep them safe and healthy.
Awesome. So what was the reason for creating this ballot? Because I don't know that I would have thought that this needed to be on the ballot, but obviously it is. There is a need for addressing this situation.
Correct. I think the proponents are coming from a place of maybe frustration. They feel that the needs of the homeless community haven't been met by the city, and many people who are voting no could agree with that. The campaign doesn't have anything to do with the city. We're just here to talk about what are the implications if this ballot initiative passes. So in their frustration, they wanted to overturn the camping ban. The problem is that the language of this ballot initiative goes way beyond the camping ban and doesn't create any enforcement for people to move them out of our neighborhood parks, to keep them out of our waterways, which obviously need to be kept safe and healthy because that's the water that we drink. So the impetus of this was from the proponents having a sense of frustration and how can we help our homeless community. But this actually does nothing for our homeless community because it doesn't provide financial services. It doesn't provide any kind of funding or more beds or more shelters or affordable housing. It doesn't do any of the things that actually create homelessness in our city.
Okay. Interesting. Because my take on it is typically these people that are camping aren't typically camping right in front of a business. They're not in your face generally, though they are in parks and, as you mentioned, a few waterways, and we do need to keep those safe and healthy. I would like to think that any family can go to a park without fear of being, someone in their space that shouldn't be. But that being said, if someone's camping, I don't feel like that's going to bother me.
So like I mentioned, there's no way to enforce. So if there was somebody or multiple people camping, for instance, at City Park Jazz Festival, we couldn't ask, the city team couldn't ask them to move out of the way for our festivals and our, those special things that we do in the park. Okay. So initially it's handing off our parks without any enforcement. It would also overturn park curfews. There's a part of the ballot initiative that reads that any law that is in conflict with this law this law would supersede it, which means park curfews, things that you can do in the park that are safe, all those things would be overdone or superseded by this new ballot initiative. So it's really broad and it's vague.
Yeah.
And so what needs to be done is really look at what the ballot initiative says, because while we do want to be compassionate with our homeless community, we do want to offer them affordable housing and services and those types of things, this doesn't actually have anything to do with the homeless access to those resources. It's just, how do we use public space in Denver, and how do we want to interact with other members of our community?
Okay, interesting. Look, and I will definitely agree with you on the fact that it's clearly not addressing any of the homelessness issues.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, I will definitely agree with you on that. That being said, it's what about this theory of live and let live? If they're not bothering me, I'm not bothering them. Why should we pull them away, pull them out of public spaces?
I think they're allowed to be in our public spaces.
Right.
Right. If they're being safe and, able to move safely in and out. Another part of the initiative says that if they camp in a space, that is their public, or that is their private space, which means that they couldn't be searched or asked for IDs, because there's a clause in there that says if anybody feels harassed or terrorized or questioned, that they would be in conflict with the law, and therefore it would be a criminal act. So it also creates a criminal code because it's so broadly written. So that's another concern.
Absolutely. So is this perhaps squatters' rights type of initiative, maybe? Am I in the right path here?
I don't know if I would define it any other way than how do we use our public space, and how is it kept safe and clean for everybody? How do we keep it maintained if people are camped there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if workers can't come in and keep it clean and safe and those types of things?
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about what yes would look like if we did vote yes on Initiative 300. What would that entail for Denverites and Coloradans, really? Right.
So what that would mean is people could camp anywhere, any sidewalk, any neighborhood park, and any alleyway. But people don't realize is that includes mountain parks, because City of Denver owns Winter Park and Red Rocks, so people could camp anywhere. It is not defined to only homeless community members. Anybody can camp anywhere for as long as they want. So how would that change your experience if you're skiing in Winter Park, or if you want to go to a concert at Red Rocks? Would people just be camped there for weeks? How do you move them in and out of the space safely and healthy? So those are the types of the concerns that are on the periphery that people don't think about, those impacts.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Interesting. I guess I didn't consider that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So give me a little more detail on why we should vote no then. Obviously, we know what it would look like. You can't stop people from camping anywhere, but voting no on this, is there perhaps another solution that we could come to an agreement on?
I think right now, we've seen this past week, Colorado Coalition from the Homeless and other service providers in the state have expressed their concerns with this bill. And it really does lower the bar of how we treat our homeless community, because essentially we're just throwing our hands in the air, giving up, and saying you can sleep outside as long as you want, which doesn't seem to be a compassionate approach. I think that following this initiative, I think the proponents brought this up because there is a sense of frustration. People in Colorado love it here. We love our community, and we want everybody to be safe and healthy, including the homeless community. So I think that the next steps are, let's vote no, and then people that become really compassionate about this, that maybe perhaps this ballot initiative has awakened a new passion for them. Get involved in the conversation. This issue has created a lot of people, talking about what can we do so that we don't have to see these broadly written ballot initiatives on our ballots, and actually come up with real solutions, more affordable housing and things that actually break the cycle of homelessness and provide for families and children that find themselves homeless.
Yeah, you keep speaking to the vagueness of this initiative. Explain that a little bit more.
So usually when you see, first of all, let's talk about how it got on the ballot. So you only need 4,726 signatures to qualify to get an initiative on the ballot, which is a pretty low bar considering how many people actually live in the city and county of Denver. So when we see ballot initiatives, what you'd like to see is a very thorough vetted process with the city attorney's office, with some legal counsel, to figure out how do these laws affect other laws in our books. And either on, maybe purposefully they wanted it to be broad and vague, but this does become immediately actionable following Election Day. So if people vote yes on this, the following day people can camp indefinitely. So there's very little time to walk things back and fix them for city council. It would take about, a few months probably, which could unfortunately may cause, I mean, I don't know for sure,
Right.
but it could cause more sweeps and more instability if we're walking back something that goes too far.
Exactly. So what's going too far then?
I think it's going too far to say people can camp in neighborhood parks and tree lines on our waterways. Also, if you think about the medians between major streets like Monaco, like people can camp there because those are city spaces. The allowing people to camp at any property of city and county of Denver is really broad.
That is really broad.
That's really broad.
Okay.
And so people can camp in tree lines in front of your home. People can camp in their cars indefinitely in our neighborhoods. So it just doesn't safe or healthy for how we use space and how we preserve our natural areas. We also think about the zoo and the museum. I mean, those are all Denver city properties.
Okay.
And they're outdoors. And this says that you can camp anywhere outdoors. So could people go inside the zoo and camp there? And how do you move them out? Because that is public space.
Right.
Are the same as the Botanic Gardens. How are we using our outdoor spaces? And are we using them for what they're for, which is not to camp, to come, enjoy, and go home?
Yes. Well, let me ask you this. So you mentioned somebody can come and on my tree line of my property. So obviously, private property laws will still be adhered to, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But the sidewalk in front of your home is city property, and then the tree line. So if there's a sidewalk and then a tree line, that is city property. So some of those properties would be affected as well.
All right. Because I think one of my main concerns was looking at when I was reading about the initiative on Ballotpedia. One thing that stuck out to me is that it wouldn't impact any private property laws. So if somebody is on my property, I can still call the cops. I can still have somebody removed. Same goes for my business. If somebody is on my business property, they are breaking the law. And so this initiative wouldn't be allowing for that. But
No.
You're saying any public space.
Any public space that is owned by the city and county of Denver.
Okay. All right. I'm wrapping my head around it a little bit more.
Yeah, so it's a large scale with large impacts.
Yes, absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about, obviously there's tons of entities that are involved in whether voting yes or no on this initiative.
Correct. So we have, people on our website, individuals, even some formerly homeless community members that are speaking out on how unsafe it is to be out on the streets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and their concerns with that. We have, business community partners as well. We're broadening our base, and not that they're part of the coalition, but the service providers have expressed their concerns with what the impacts would be if we pass something like this in the city.
Tell me a little bit more about formerly homeless people and their concerns.
Well, just that by allowing them to camp, by allowing the community to camp, that increases the cycle of homelessness and doesn't do anything to lift people out of homelessness, because they get in these campsites and these there's no outreach, right? Like people aren't allowed to, under this law, approach anybody without feeling harassed. And so what that does for outreach workers is it creates concerns for them.
Okay.
Because they're like, well, I don't want to get a ticket for trying to help somebody.
Exactly.
If they're feeling like I'm harassing them, I just want to give them a hand up. So
okay.
So those are some of the concerns that we're hearing. And it's not, the temperatures, we know we have a storm coming up, tomorrow. Mm-hmm. The temperatures in Denver aren't safe and healthy to camp 24 hours a day. This time of year particularly. Yeah, exactly. So I think those are some major concerns as well.
And so we know that we have lots of people in this coalition on voting no for Initiative 300. That being said, after the vote, are we looking at real solutions for homelessness? Is there any momentum towards that?
Well, I think what's exciting is there's lots of members running for city council. And okay. I think voters should talk to their city council members about homelessness and what their ideas are, because, obviously the proponents don't feel like the city has done much. And I think some of us agree that there needs to, more needs to be done.
Right.
So I think you know, after May 7th, we might see a whole new city council, we might see a new mayor, but this issue will continue. And so therefore, I think people just need to get excited and just demand more from our elected leaders.
I like that.
Yeah.
I definitely think we should hold them accountable for
Yeah.
sure. So give me a few more thoughts. What kind of impressions would you like to leave with the audience here today?
I think, obviously, vote no on 300. And if this hasn't awakened a passion for you, reach out to service providers. Find out how you can help. Find out about the stories that we're learning from former homeless members of the community at our website, which is togetherdenver.com. Follow us on Facebook. They're commenting on there and sharing their stories. If there are stories that people know in the community that they would like to share with us, we're open to it. We want to hear, and we want to pass those stories along so that after May 7th, you know, the conversation continues.
Exactly. I like hearing that. I agree
Yeah.
with you. I definitely think this is a conversation that, while we're offering one initiative here, there definitely needs to be a bigger conversation.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. So again, that is togetherdenver.com. Thank you, not .org.
Yeah.
So togetherdenver.com. Any other, you have social media,
Yep.
Facebook?
Yeah, we're on social media. We're on Facebook. You know, give us a shout out. Tell us your stories, and get involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Alvina. It has been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us on Connect and Collaborate today. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. And find this podcast and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I am excited to continue this conversation talking about Initiative 300, specifically No on Initiative 300. I have in studio with me Cody Belzley, and so we're going to talk about this Initiative 300. And while we were off air, I got excited with you because you framed this in a new light that I hadn't thought of before.
Yeah.
So before we do that, let's
Yes.
talk about you.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, wonderful. But yeah, let's kind of jump in here. And why are you into No on Initiative 300?
Sure. So I've lived in Denver for about 20 years and have dedicated my career to public policy at the state and local level and a variety of health and human services issues. And I love tough policy questions. And I think one of the things that's really very real is that Denver is experiencing a lot of change, a lot of growth. The cost of living, the cost of housing is increasing. More and more people are finding it harder and harder to live in our community, and certainly homelessness is a real issue in Denver. We at Together Denver believe strongly that people have a right to be in Denver, but Initiative 300 is not a solution to Denver's homelessness challenges. It does nothing to support people experiencing homelessness today. It does nothing to address the root causes of homelessness. To be honest, it's really a question of how we want to use our public spaces. And what the initiative does, is it makes it legal for anyone, not just people experiencing homelessness, but anyone, to camp in our sidewalks, our alleyways, our parks, the medians in our parkways. It's a really broad and sweeping initiative. And I think what we find is that the proponents have really hit on an issue that Denver voters are concerned about, which is homelessness. But they've offered a policy that really doesn't address the challenge that they've identified.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you on that. In a previous discussion on this, I was talking with Alvina Vasquez, also a spokesperson for No on 300. And my issue, I think, that I'm taking with it is live and let live. Why are we so adamant about making sure these people aren't in our public spaces? But you kind of, you've given me a new outlook on this, and which is really exciting. And I like that you use the term, this is more of a land use policy than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, if you actually read the initiative language, which, to be honest, the proponents aren't so fond of reading the initiative language, but we are. When you read the initiative language, what you see is that homelessness actually doesn't come up in the initiative language. What this talks about is how we use our public places and our public spaces and creating new rights for all people, not just people experiencing homelessness to camp in public places, to establish shelters in public places without defining what those shelters could be, right? So we don't know what types of shelters could be erected, what types of building materials could be used. It allows people to live out of their cars or RVs that could be parked in residential neighborhoods indefinitely.
Yeah.
And the concern here really is a public health and safety concern, that when you have large groups of people living together without basic infrastructure, so without running water, without toilets, without trash collection, the consequences are significant. We have seen in communities like San Francisco and Los Angeles and Portland, where many of these encampments are existing. We've seen the return of diseases like typhus and hepatitis, diseases that are not common in modern developed countries that are reemerging. And those public health concerns are a real risk for the people who are living in those encampments and for the broader community. And so I think we need to do more to address homelessness in Denver, but Initiative 300 isn't a solution to our homeless challenge.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at the verbiage here.
Yeah.
Let's look at what the initiative actually is.
Yeah, that would be great. So it basically creates a right to rest or shelter in any public place. I think one of the things that's really concerning about this initiative is just the broad definition of public spaces. So I have it here in front of me. It means any outdoor property that's owned or leased in whole or in part by the city and county of Denver and is accessible to the public or any city property on which there is an easement for public use, right? So like I said, this includes all sidewalks. It includes the grass strip between the sidewalk and the street. It includes the alleyways behind homes and businesses. It includes our major parks like Wash Park, City Park, Sloan's Lake, but it also includes pocket parks and playgrounds that families use. It includes the 14,000 acres of mountain parks that are actually outside of the city and county of Denver, but are controlled and operated by Denver Parks. It includes the land adjacent to the Platte River and to the Highline Canal. It can include bike paths, dog parks. So it's a really wide-reaching definition of public spaces that would be impacted. And what it says is that people have the right to rest and shelter in those public places, but it doesn't define what sheltering means.
Right.
So it could be tent camping, like we sort of typically think of, but it could also be erecting more permanent type shelters in these public places, making it really difficult to use our parks or our sidewalks. And for, your constituency, for business owners, it's a real concern that people could be living around businesses, potentially impacting access to those places of business.
Yeah, I think one of the arguments that we might see on this is you're going to have extremists in both cases, but I think one of the issues that people are really taking up and looking at, and probably the proponents for yes on 300, are looking at those business owners that get really angry with the one homeless guy that took a nap on a bench for 20 minutes. He's only been there for an hour, but he took a nap for 20 minutes, and that guy is clearly the reason I don't have any business today, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the tricky and interesting and fun part about public policy is figuring out how to take into consideration the individual cases and the individual experiences, and then determine what is the right policy to govern our community's actions and our community's priorities. And I think Initiative 300 is an example of policy that goes too far, that really fails to provide any new resources or supports for people who are experiencing homelessness. That's the other thing that we didn't even get a chance to get to, is what's not in the initiative language. There's no money for outreach, for job training, for mental health or substance abuse services for people who may find themselves living on the street. There's no money for housing or supportive housing or any of the things that may be contributing to homelessness. And the initiative is written so broadly that it actually prohibits Denver from enforcing any other policy or ordinance that conflicts with the rights provided for in this law. And so it actually prohibits Denver from enforcing basic safety provisions like park curfew laws, for example.
Okay.
And so the broad way that the initiative and the policy is written is a problem, and what's not included in it is also an issue.
Right. Okay, so let's, I want to talk a little bit more about the not being able to enforce any other laws.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think that one was the hardest for me to wrap my head around.
Right.
Yeah.
So, in the ordinance language, again, I'm reading from the ordinance itself. There's a prohibitions and obligations section in the ordinance, and it reads, "It shall be unlawful for the city and county of Denver to enforce any ordinance, resolution, regulation, rule, or policy that limits, prohibits, or penalizes the rights secured by this ordinance."
Okay.
So it's very broad language. The city attorney has actually released a brief memo outlining what they believe the implications for passage of Initiative 300 would include. And they've listed probably 7 or 8 different existing city laws that would be either overturned or unenforceable if Initiative 300 passes. So it's the it's the urban camping ban, which is what the proponents are primarily motivated by. But it also includes park curfew laws, the sit and lie ordinances, even policies about how trees in public places are used. Right now, there are city laws about not being able to hang things on trees so that people aren't drying their laundry on trees or setting up hammocks in trees. That would be eliminated if 300 were to pass. There's some policies now about what the city can do to clear public places for public health and safety reasons, again, would be overturned by this initiative. So the proponents have, sort of taken a sledgehammer to address an issue that maybe deserved more of a scalpel approach.
Yes. Well, and so that is for existing laws, but also moving forward. Would we be able to, not that anyone wants to rewrite laws that they've already written, but essentially, could those laws be rewritten after this initiative if there is a yes?
It's hard to predict. One of the things that is really concerning about this is that this is an unprecedented policy. So if Denver voters approve it, we'll be the first city in the country to have adopted such a broad and sweeping right to rest and shelter in public spaces. And so how it gets implemented and all of the implications of what it means for future lawmaking are really unclear.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things I just wanted to mention really quickly is in that same prohibitions and obligations section of the initiative language is that it says it shall be unlawful for an employee or agent of any government agency, corporation, business, or any other entity to harass, terrorize, threaten, or intimidate any person exercising their rights secured by this ordinance. Really broad language that applies not only to public sector, but to private sector employees as well. And what's concerning here is that the terms harass, terrorize, threaten, or intimidate are not defined in this initiative. So if you're a business owner and there's somebody on the sidewalk outside of your business and you approach that person and that person feels harassed, threatened, intimidated by that approach, you could be subject to criminal or civil liability under this law. And not just business owners or private citizens who may approach people who are in need, but first responders and trained social workers, outreach workers. So we actually think that based on the way this is written, it could really have a chilling effect on the ability of trained social workers, outreach workers, first responders who are here to help our community to protect our public health and safety from doing their job, as well as creating or opening the door to expensive litigation and lawsuits in the private sector as well.
Yes. I want to talk about these definitions. As you've mentioned, they are broad. They are very sweeping. They are open. And we would be the first city to adopt this. And typically what happens is when you've got such a sweeping, open law that's brand new, they do that on purpose in order to make it able to be interpreted in the courtroom. There's good and bad to that. There's good and bad to that.
I think the question is, do we want Denver to be the test case for a policy like this? Right? And what is the cost, not just to the city, but potentially to private entities as well, to litigating these questions and trying to sort out this policy as we work to implement it, should it pass? We believe at Together Denver that it's not a good use of public or private resources to go through litigation to try to sort all of these details out. We think that it would be better to fail the policy at the outset, and have a really focused conversation about what it is we do need to do to address homelessness and the root causes of homelessness in our community, because Initiative 300 doesn't do that.
I think that is very well said, and I do agree with you on that. I've always been a person that says live and let live, and why do we need to push people away? But at the same time, you've brought some light, both to myself and hopefully to some listeners out there. This is a land use policy. You're not actually providing any real solutions for the homelessness problem, and so the fact that the proponents, I think, are using homelessness as kind of a guilt trip. Really, on this policy. But that being said, people have to make their own decisions.
For sure.
They make the right decisions. Any last thoughts you want to leave with our audience here?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things. One, I don't know that many people know this is on the ballot. So really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, to talk with folks about this. Election day is May 7th, but Denver, like all of Colorado, is an all mail-in ballot community, and so ballots will be dropping on or around April 15th, which means we've got about 3 weeks still to get the word out there before people have the opportunity to vote on this. Our website, togetherdenver.com, has a Get Involved page, an opportunity for Denver residents to request a speaker at their homeowners association, their registered neighborhood group, a civic organization like a Rotary Club. We're really eager to get out into the community, because what we have found is that people believe that homelessness really is a very real challenge for Denver. And because of the broad way that this is written, you read it on the surface and you think, oh, live and let live, you know, this is a reasonable policy. But when you really read between the lines and you understand all the implications of the policy, people are rightly concerned. And so we need help getting the word out there, and are looking for opportunities to connect with Denver voters, especially in the next month, to make sure they understand the risks of Initiative 300.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cody. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Alex.
I appreciate the insight. And be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. You can find this podcast more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. Once again, visit togetherdenver.com if you would like someone to come speak to your community. Thank you, Cody. Have a great day.
You too.